Hello, welcome to Dorcas Fashion Academy. I am Dorcas Hammond and today I will be teaching you how to make a tote bag. If you've bought our kit, you will find that you can print out the pattern for your tote bag. The way that we do it is matching up the numbers and sometimes the letters. In this case, we have page 1, page 2, page 3 and so on, and we're matching up the numbers. And then we have another piece of pattern which is for your pocket, and this one is with letters A, B, C, D and E. Basically what you do, you cut out the lines that match, stick them together with sellotape or glue, and then you would cut out your pattern. Okay, so this is how we're going to cut our pattern. This is the outer and the inner, meaning the outer and the lining. Now the outer is cut right along the edge of the pattern, but if you check your pattern here, it tells you to fold, or rather to cut about 2 centimeters down on the lining bit, so that we don't have too much fabric on the inside of the bag. If you cut them both exactly the same, there's always excess fabric. So one of the fabrics is going to be cut at the edge of the paper, and the other one is going to be cut with about 2 centimeters folded inwards. You also need to cut 2 of the interfacings. I have already cut this one down, and I've also stuck it to my fabric. Then we have our pocket piece. This pocket piece is going to be in a contrast. I have chosen this wine burgundy with this Aztec print. I think it goes quite well. And then we need our strap, which is also 2 of them cut on a fold. What isn't in our pattern is this tiny little bit of tag, which we've incorporated after making the first sample. It's just about 4 centimeters by about 25 or 30, and this will be our ties in the middle of our bag. We did try magnets, but it opens up, so I preferred to have a tie. So once you place your patterns on your fabric and cut them out, you have to bear in mind your notches. It's very important. These here is super important because it's going to be the pocket placement. These here is going to be for the straps, and the center bit is going to be for our little ties. We don't actually have notches on the pocket piece, nor on the straps. So I think we can start sewing. The first thing to do is to hem the top of our pocket. So we have allowed 2 centimeters seam allowance, so it'll be 2 centimeters folding in 1. If you prefer, you can fold in 1, press and fold in another, and I'm going to sew close to the very edge. Okay, so I've finished sewing the hem, always on the inner part of the fold, and this is already done. And in the meantime, when I pressed, I prepared my little tags. All it is fold 1 centimeter or 1 centimeter, or try to meet them in the middle, and then fold them in half. We don't usually do the ends because this is a very thick, heavy fabric, and it's very difficult to have this folded and sewn with about 6 layers of fabric. We do a knot at the end, but if it's a thinner fabric, you can always fold this inwards and then do this and then fold it in half. For our sewing machines, this is a little bit thick, so we just do a knot, but you can do it in this manner if you see fit. I'm just going to sew this at the edge. Right, so whilst I'm at it, I'm also going to sew my straps. This way I can position everything at one point. This is also important to do the bits that match up the colors. We don't have a problem here because I'm using wine burgundy, the same on the contrast fabric that I will on the inner fabric. But if you have two separate different types of colors that you've got to change a thread, then you would have to change color, so it's best if you do it all together. So basically this is your strap, and all it is fold in half and stitch at the width of the presser foot. Now remember, the presser foot is just aligning your presser foot on the edge of your fabric when you sew. So our straps are done, our ties are done, and our pockets. What I'm going to teach you how to turn this the right way round. So I'm going to use a loop turner. This is my loop turner, and it has a little hook here and it is little bar. And what we're going to do is we're going to insert it through our strap. This is so that you can see it better. And we're going to make this little tag come out through the fabric. Okay, I don't know if you can see this. So now it's hooked, a bit like a crochet needle. And all we need to do is slide the outer fabric softly and gently, and without having all the fabric right at the very end. It's got to be a gradual process, and always keeping it taut. If you don't keep it taut, it's going to come out of the hook. I kept it taut, and it's been able to turn inside out. You see, this is quite a hard fabric, so it takes a little bit of tugging. But as you can see, it's all been turned. I'm going to turn the other one and press these and come back in a minute. Okay, so I've pressed my straps with the seam on the side, and I'm going to position the pocket pieces. And if you've done your work right, you're going to have 2 notches on either side. This is very important because it would look really ugly if afterwards the pockets didn't match. So it's very important that you have these notches. So I'm positioning my pocket piece on the notch, and I'm going to pin on either side. I've got to do this on both pieces because we have 2 pieces for the outer part of our bag. Firstly, this is one of them. And this is number 2. Also, we have our notches here. So pin and pin. If there's anything left over afterwards, it doesn't really matter. You can just trim it. It's more important that you have these together. So first of all, we're going to create pockets in here. So we have to find the center of our bag. And I'm just going to fold it in half and find the center. I'm going to put a pin here because we're going to stitch down to create a center seam. Basically, I'm just going to do a bit of a line there. And I know I have to sew from the top of the pocket with a reverse and down to the bottom. But now we're also going to do this here. It's just to secure this bit. It's just within 1 centimeter up straight. So you can get a ruler or you can get a chalk, or you can do it by eye only. It's not a big deal. It's just to secure that corner there. The same applies onto this side. I mean, obviously you can always measure the same amount here and here, but it's not so important. So basically I'm going to do the same on the other side. I'm going to start sewing. Okay, so I've prepared both of them and I'm going to start sewing. I'm going to start sewing on the one on the right. Then I'll do the center and then I'll turn it around because it's obviously easier than having all the fabric inside the sewing machine. So start with a reverse, straight stitching. All the way down to the bottom. Okay, so I've already sewn my 3 lines with the reverse at the beginning and at the end, and now we have pockets. So if you've done your work correctly, you should have 2 notches here at the top. This would be the separation of your straps, and in the middle we'd have your little tie. So I've already sewn it, but you can pin it and pin your straps, making sure that the seam is on the inside and it's not twisted, and sew across just to secure. I've sewn across both ties and straps, and now I'm going to position one on top of the other. Now it's very important to keep your pockets together. There's nothing uglier than 2 pockets that don't match on the side. So pin them together and treat them as one. Place your fabric one on top of the other, interfacing pocket and the other side the same. Making sure that the pocket aligns with the notch and the pocket endings up until the bottom. Keep your seams all together so that afterwards we have no issues with the turning around. Sometimes when you sew, when you turn it around, there's one fabric further out than the other, and sometimes it escapes the stitching. So we're going to pin here, we're going to pin the bottom, and we're going to pin the other side. Again, matching up our pocket together with our notch and together with our pieces. So I'm going to sew the sides and sew the bottom, but not these corners. So my bag is now sewn, and now we're going to do the corners. Taking off all the pins and cutting all the threads, neatening everything as best as possible. What you need to do is take these corners and align the bottom seam with the side seam. This is just as important as the pocket because it looks awful when these seams don't match. I try to pin on the seam both together. There's a lot of fluff and a lot of threads coming out. Or we can trim that later. So basically it's in the center seam, and all we're going to do is sew across on both sides, and this is going to square the bottom of our bag. I do a reverse at the beginning, and I'm also going to do a reverse on top of the seam to flatten it down, very slowly and gently. You can trim off any excess, but remember to pull out your pin, otherwise you'll be ruining your shears. So basically our bag, or our outside of a bag, is ready. But now is a very good moment to check your pocket placements, because sometimes it just comes out of your seam. So it's important to have a look at them, that there's no fraying edges that hasn't been caught with your stitch. Because although we say 1 centimeter seam allowance, it doesn't always happen. With 4 layers of fabric, it might come out, but these are fine. So this is practically your bag ready. So now we're going to prepare our lining. So this is our lining, and we're going to sew in the same manner as we did our bag. We do the sides and we do the bottom, but instead of sewing the whole bottom, we're gonna leave a nice big gap so that we can turn the whole bag out afterwards. I'm going to put a few pins on the sides so that we can sew. And I'm going to put a pin here because it's only going to be from the edge to here, this pin, and from the edge to this pin. Again, we don't do the corners yet. We will do them once the sides are sewn. So basically you don't need so many pins on this piece because it's only 2 layers of fabric. This one was much easier because it was 2 pieces of fabric sewn together. So now again we want to do our corners. Again we open our seam and try to align as best as possible your center seam with your center seam. Pin across, one on top of the other, and sew across. Right, so this is my insides now ready. I'm going to go to my iron and press my seams open of my lining and of my bag. So I'll be back in a second. Okay, so now we have our bag, the right side on the inside, and we have our lining with the right side on the outside. I'm going to stick right sides together and position our seams together and matching. We're going to sew all the way around and then turn it out through the gap that we had left before. So first of all, I start with my seams. This makes sure that everything should align. And then I'm going to pin all the way around. If you've sewn correctly, everything should match. If you've sewn at less than 1 centimeter on one of them, and not on the other. You might have a bit of excess fabric here in the lining, but really it won't be very noticeable, so don't worry too much. This one seems to be matching. Right, so my lining and my bag are pinned together, and I'm going to sew all the way around. It might be a bit tricky because the interfacing is a little bit hard, but you just have to have a little bit of patience. And start on a seam. Don't start just anywhere. Start on a seam. I'm going to place my needle towards the left. This way I've got a little bit more stability at the top where we are going to top stitch later. Okay, so it's sewn. I'm going to take all the pins out, and don't forget, because we're going to turn it the right way round, so if there's any pins inside we won't be able to turn it round properly. Okay, so now via this gap that we left before, we're going to grab the insides of the bag and pull it out. And don't be scared. A lot of people are scared of doing this, but if you don't do it, there's no other way. Plus, if you leave a decent enough gap, it shouldn't be a problem. So this is our bag. Turn out the corners. You can poke them either with your finger or with a pair of scissors. And this is the bottom of our bag. Right, so this is practically it. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to press this open, and then I'm going to press it down inwards so that I can top stitch the top edge of the bag. So I've pressed the top edge, and I'm going to machine stitch at about 1.5 centimeters to give it a sturdier look. Then also we have to close up this opening, and all you need to do is fold 1 centimeter and machine stitch close to the edge. I'm going to place a few pins, and when I finish top stitching, I'm going to close this opening too. Right, so basically this is your tote bag, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a knot very close to the edge, and if need be, either I'll put some glue on or I'll cut whatever is excess on this tie, which looks quite cute. And this is your bag, but I'm going to show you a little trick how to make it crisper, and this we're going to do now. If you like, where you have your machine stitch in the corner, you can hold your lining together with your bag and place a couple of pins, just making this edge crisp. The 4 edges, making sure that the lining is together with the fabric, and you can machine stitch from just below this corner to the top on each of the corners, because this will give it a crisp look. I'm going to sew them and then you can see. It's obviously optional, but I like to do it. Okay, so basically this is your bag. As you can see with these corners, it gives it a crisp look and a bit more petite looking bag. Obviously this is optional and you can do whatever you see fit with the bag. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. See you next time.